complements or opposites?
Yes.
Would these be complements or opposites? Please don't get caught up in the English word and what opposites mean.
Right.
It's very important to understand that. When I say opposites or complements, I'm saying it is the same thing, but differs only by degree. At what point does air get so hot that it becomes moisture? Yes, these are the things that you have to think about. So what I'm saying is that air and moisture in many ways are the same, but it's according to which degree you put them on that defines what they are. Do you understand what I'm saying here? You know, it's like good and bad. At what point does good become bad? They're both the opposite sides of the spectrum, but at some point they meet. And good and bad are basically, they neutralize themselves. Okay, you have our set. You have who else? Set. See, now you know how young people feel in the classroom.
That's right.
See, you know, we are all conditioned to think that I'm trying to trick you. And the answers to what I'm asking you is on the board. Right there.
But I tell them that all the time. They're right in front. I'm not trying to trick you.
That's right.
They're right there.
But you see what the society has done to make the teacher have to tell the children, I'm not trying to trick you, which tells you about the system that we're dealing with. It does not test children. It doesn't test for what they know. It tests for what they don't know. Creates an adversarial relationship so that students not only do not like to take tests, but many times they get answers wrong when they really need the answer because they say it can't be so simple as to be up there. So it has to be wrong. Yes, my brother. Who else was in the Syrian drama?
No, it breeds self-doubt.
I'm sorry?
It breeds self-doubt.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does.
And you're going to also tell us how we can, some tips on how to help our children pass their May 9th test too. Could you put that in your agenda?
Sure.
Thank you. The next one is never test.
Never test.
No,
Who else? Who else? Okay. Tehuti. Tehuti is also known as Jehuti or also known as thought. I'll put thought here just for you to know. Thought. Ibis. He had an ibis head. Long nose like a bird. Yes.
no, I should have I'm sure, I mean, like I said, I want to go. Last night I was at a special place and I took my kids there. 5, 10, 13. And this is what it's all about. Doing the whole, everything the same. Same person that wrote around Metanetra is orchestrating the whole thing. And it's been around about 400 people. So, when we had been able to sit there and go through it, they went through it we had about 5 hours, we had to leave. But they went through every classification, the names, what it was, the principles, and who was who, and what is in the name. What does the name mean? And it means about what's your destiny. And you live according to your name, you live according to your destiny. Well, anyway, I'm going to go on.
The final participant in the Syrian drama was Infu.
You didn't give us those last two names before, did you?
No, I didn't. Because actually the way the Memphite theology is told, these were not given birth to at one place in the Eden. But these do come into place in terms of the Syrian drama. But they were not part per se of the Eden. Okay? Infu, also known as Anubis, or the dog. Tall ears. The guardian. You'll always see him draped over the sarcophagus. Okay, now, what I'd like to do is tell you this. Let's look at the personality aspect of this story and how we can look at the Syrian drama and see the creation of civilization or the essence of self and being and who you are in the development of the human being in terms of civilization. Usir is the higher passions. Usir is righteousness. Let's define him a little further. Usir is courageous. Remember the jet column, which is the backbone, or said to be a backbone, and it is drawn looking somewhat like a backbone. He is courageous. He's caring, trusting, truthful, with also ma'atim. Look at Aset. Aset represents resilience. Please know a thesaurus will give you a lot more words to put in place here. And your thinking that you do as you go home and think about what we're talking about will also aid you. But what I do ask you is please do not look at this as written in stone. There's so much more work that we have to do. But the Usirian drama is very important to the African family in terms of putting our morals and our values back into place and to understand how to deal with some of the things that we confront as people every day. Aset is, okay, Usir was also father. Aset, mother, or resilient and resilience. She is determined. She is a sustainer, a nurturer, keeper of all things that are sacred, and she's loving. Nebetet, oracle reader. She is spiritual, resourceful, insightful, visionary, and sensitive. This is a modern version or today's version of being able to look at this. These are not African words, and if spoken in the African language, they may be said differently because of the conceptual perspective. But basically, there are universal personality traits that we all have, that we could begin to put these in place. Satesh is the lower passions. Satesh represents jealousy, envy, revenge, negative emotions, and he's a schemer. I'm sorry? Oh yes. Oh please no, Satesh is in all of us. Heru is the child of Usir and Aset. But please know, at Usir, at Heru's highest form, he is Usir reborn. Do you understand what I mean by that?
Like father, like son.
Yes, it goes along with that saying, but it's important that when we're looking at Usir, that we do not separate Heru that far apart. In other words, what the ancients were saying is that children, you just don't procreate yourself. You just don't create, you actually physically create yourself over again through your children, which is key. So that when we look at our children that we bring into the world biologically, we're not just bringing in children. That's us that we're looking at. And this is what the African was trying to say, is that you are actually being reborn. And this was Heru, what represented Heru. Heru, while looking male, represented both male and female. That's why I introduced Heru as a child. Heru is, I'm sorry?
Is that equivalent to, let's say, Buddha, then Krishna, then Jesus the Christ, then King and Martin? I mean, in terms of coming back into a higher form intellectually?
That's a way that
you said Heru was a higher form, basically, than his father.
You know what I really meant is that he's the same form, and that he is the same person.
Okay.
That's really what I'm trying to say.
All right. Okay.
And I'm going to give you examples of what I'm talking about on a very personal level, because what's important to understand is that in the Memphite theology, it is said that they were born all at once. And when we look at personalities and when we look at ourselves, one way of looking at the Usirian drama was in discussing personality traits in human beings and the war between good and evil in all human beings. And that if you have a problem, your righteous side of you may want to deal with it a certain way. There's another side of you that may want to deal with it another way. If you make the right choice according to Ma'at, then you will be reborn. and you come forward as Heru, but you're still the same person. I don't want to lose anybody. I want to take this along personality-wise. Because you're not changing. The Father doesn't change. It's just that His Son comes to take His place, or that new person in you that has made a decision, or whatever it may be, on an emotional level, has made a decision, and you have overcome Satesh, or the negative force, or the lower passions. Your girlfriend that you hang out with, your best buddy, she just gets a wonderful promotion, a promotion that you would have liked to have had. Now Satesh starts to work on it. See, now that's your girl. I should also say your boyfriend for us males. But your friend. Now, something starts working on you. Satesh says, I love my friend, but I think I got a good job. That's Satesh working on you. There's another side of you that's coming along. And this is Usir saying, listen, but that wasn't your job. It went to the person that it should have gone to. And Satesh says, no. And then all of a sudden you start to get quick with your friend. You're not as nice to her or to him as you used to be. Satesh is working on you. And then all of a sudden Usir says, listen, stop that. When you were in trouble, your friend helped you out. Stop that now because you're heading the wrong way. And then you say, wow, I really need to just sit down and meditate, talk to the ancestors. You just go ahead and do your thing. And then all of a sudden you come forward to day by night and say, I really was wrong. That's really very selfish, envious, jealous. You already named Satesh in so many ways. I have to be better than this. I'm going to forget it that, next time I'll just try harder. That person that's coming forward out of you is Heru. Can you follow the personality traits that I've given you in terms of how to look at this from a personal perspective? That essence that fought you all the way, that made you talk to the ancestors, that made you try to understand that this is your friend, that was aset, or determination, sensitivity. The person that allowed you to view it and to analyze it and to come to your understanding, or the ancestors themselves who spoke to you, Nebetek. Tehuti is the knowledge person who actually gives you the information you need, who's telling you, that was your friend. And now all of a sudden you're going to turn on your friend just because she or he got your job that you wanted. Personality traits. And what the ancient Africans were attempting to tell us as part of the Usirian drama, from what I can see, is that there is a constant battle, an internal battle with the human being. Constantly. Civilization, although we talked about fire, tools, we spoke about language, and we spoke about, there was another thing that made fire, tools, language, agriculture, okay. The development that led to the development of agriculture. All of this comes about when Usir, or the righteous individual, rises and meets the test of time. Okay. There was another way that you can look at the story. So one way of looking at the Usirian drama is through personality. Impu is the guardian, the dog.
All right.
Another way of looking at it would be agriculture. Every year we go through what kind of a season?
Planting, harvesting.
Yes, and what happens is that but nature dies and then is reborn. If we looked at the seasons and wanted to give them names, spring, summer, well, let's look at summer. Spring and summer could be who? Usir.
Right.
Winter would be Satesh. And then coming back into spring, who would that be? Heru. But isn't Heru still Usir?
Yes.
It's the same agricultural season, but Heru is coming through again and is being reborn to lay a sense of plant life down for the regeneration of the people. So the Usirian drama was also looked upon through terms of agriculture. Another time was day and night. When the sun is traversing in the sky, and the sun is in the sky, who is that? Usir. Right around, well, it's going to change today, but when it starts to get dark, dusk, Who is that? Leading into night would be Setesh, right? Dawn comes. And who is that? Because of the rebirth of the sun. And this is where the concept of Nut, giving birth to the sun constantly, the sky, swallowing it at night and giving birth to it during the day. This was a pictograph for that type of a concept. Yes, my sister.
Well, why is night equivalent to Satesh? I mean, considering, is it because things negative going in the nighttime or something?
I wouldn't say so. I would just say it was an analogical story that told of night and day. You see, the other thing is, please understand that Setai 1 and Setai 2 were named after Set. Setesh, on another level, is not a negative person. You see, there's a story behind this, and that is, and see, when we get into the Syrian drama, you'll be able to tell some of the other parts of the story, is that Set is not to be confined. Your negative emotions are not to be confined. They are to be put into place and kept there. And kept in that place, they could help you. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's important, and this is what the African could take the highest of nature and the lowest of nature and give it a quality that made it unique amongst nature. And that was the essence that represented the Creator. So it's important that we don't put things into compartments like we are in compartments. Satesh is not all that. If put in place and if put in check, he is in a very good position.
He could protect us.
That's right. It's very possible that if in control,
That's right.
he can help you out.
That's right. We should use Satesh to make Yaak and Isaac.
No, we should have used Herukuti.
Okay. Well, see, I don't know Herukuti, so that's
Okay.
how I could break it down.
Well, we're going to go through this story, and I'm going to let you know who Herukuti is by the end of this.
Thank you.
Okay, so these are the three different stories. There are more stories that can be told. As we do more research, we'll probably find more out. But I just wanted to put these stories out so that you can see in the many ways that the Usirian drama is looked upon. It is what's known as multi-referential. In other words, it can mean a lot of things. It's according to what they go through that determines how they are going to act. And really, this was the purpose of the stories that the Africans used to tell. Yes, my sister.
Did you say, into?
Inpu, I-N-P-U, which is the spelling that I got.
Right, did you say that, I was wondering if you affiliated darkness and death with them?
With who? Inpu?
Yeah.
No, not necessarily.
Okay.
Inpu was a guardian.
Is what?
Is the guardian.
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 Well, where would I?
Well, okay, now what I put down in terms of being a guardian, let me tell you who Tehuti is. Tehuti is intelligence. He's a thinker. And he comes in the form of an ibis. Now what's important about what we're doing here, brothers and sisters, is that we don't have ibises in our community. But the ibis represented something very important to the ancient Africans. What we need to do is take what the ibis represented in a Kemetic environment and find another type of essence amongst us that also has that same role. Do you understand what I'm saying? The ibis, for some reason or other, represents something like Kepra was the dung beetle who laid its eggs in dung and rolled it. So there was a story behind it. See, we don't have dung beetles in our community. Now, we may have other types of things, but we don't have. But there was something that the dung beetle represented from an abstract or from a conceptual point of view. And that's why they use the ibis. We have got to find for our young people, or our young people have to find for themselves, what in our society represents that same concept and begin to apply it. Do you see what I'm saying? We're not in Kemet, and we're not along the banks of Africa. So we cannot get caught up so much in their story as it's told, as much as the concept and the abstractness of their story. Are there questions or comments thus far?
If you don't mind, I didn't understand the Djibouti.
Okay.
It's like we don't have them in the community.
Yes.
We get it all the time.
Yeah, okay. Every environment and culture determines its stories, determines its life system, eats the types of food because of its immediate environment. In ancient Africa, the ibis, the dung beetle, the Anubis or the dog, all of these represented something to the ancient Kemites. In our society, we do not have those animals in our environment. So we are lacking a concrete example of what it is that we're talking about. So what in our, let's say that, what in our society represents rejuvenation or rebirth? Like a Kepler beetle would do in Kemet, what in New York City, in St. Albans, Queens, in our communities, represents this constant annual or yearly resurrection of life? I'm throwing this out as a possibility to think. Because we can't get too caught up on what the ancients were saying because it doesn't apply to our surroundings.
How about that tree? That we don't, the budding of the tree?
It could be.
We have
It could be. Any of those things that could bring to life that concept could be used.
You mean in the storytelling form
Mhm.
that we need in our community?
In any way that you'd like to use it. See, this built an entire civilization. Remember we spoke about language. This came out of language, right? And we still don't know how Metanetia was spoken, so I don't know if her name was Aset, or it was Setesh, or Tehuti, because we really don't know the structure of their language, or at least I don't know, to the point where I could say. What we're attempting to do now, from what I can understand, is to put E's as vowels. Yes, my brother.
Are you saying, not are you saying, but is what's being said, like, here you have the interconnect concept on the board. If we was to speak, thinking it as black African.
There's only one kind of African.
No, I mean, see, I have to say that like that. See, I understand it's only one kind of African, but I have to say it like that because like what I'm not expressing right now. If we think black African right now, here in Queens, 1991, instead of having Jose or Jose on that, you have New Year's Eve, Easter, you see what I'm saying? Like that. Because it's based on that westernized thinking. So when you say, if we could simulate that thinking as only one type of African now, here in 1991 in Queens, what can we see in examples of life around us that would be our value system based on the same similarity of what was in ancient times today? That's how we have to make up our mind. Nobody else can define our definition. Let's redefine our own definition instead of going by the calendar.
But it would have to follow a general logic.
That's what I'm saying.
What you showed.
Yeah. That's what.
Couldn't the seven principles fit
Yeah, like
somewhere
that.
in there?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Sure. Yes. Yeah, you see, this all is in place. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm getting to. But what I'm asking you to do is to think.
The seasons, yeah.
I'm not saying that what we're going to do and what we're going to say is this and that. I'm saying that when looking at the Usirian drama, there was a values, clarification, and morals told in the story that is not replicated in the society that we're living in because of our environment. What we have got to do is take the abstract message of the Usirian drama and make it real for us today.
And the seven principles are very real for us today
That's
because
right.
they talk about community, collective
That's
working
right.
together, support, things like that. And that is so necessary in where we're at today.
That's right. And the only difference was that the ancient Africans personified that story. But if you notice, when I went through this first, I gave you words to define them. I did not tell you who they were. They are not people.
Right.
They are the personification of an abstract story, which is morals and morals clarification and values
And
clarification.
that's the same thing they want to teach them in school too.
Exactly. It's the same thing. And once we get into the Usirian drama, you'll understand what I'm saying. And this is only one version of it. Okay. Tehuti was the holder of all sacred records, past, present, and future. He was a writer, reader, and speaker.
That's the Hootie?
That's Tehuti. He was much more than this. All of them were much more than what I've said, but this is a base from where we can start.
Tahuti's Jehuti too, right?
Yes, Jehuti, he's also called with a J, and he's also called Thoth. Thoth.
Seems, looks a little bit like truth.
Yes.
And I was looking
Yes.
at.
Well, that's made-
Comes through knowledge.
Yes.
And information and stuff
Mhm.
like that.
Yeah. And then you have Impu. Tahuti is a scholar, by the way. Impu is trustworthy, loyal, discriminating, and analytical. And Impu is at all of these scenes where judgment is being done. Tahuti writes out, Tahuti is the one that records and weighs the heart. Impu is the one that looks at the heart. Tahuti records what happens on the heart. He is the writer. And that's where you have the heart and the feather being weighed. That's the judgment scene. And Impu is there to discriminate as to the feelings in the heart. Like this particular Impu, the way it's explained to me by Naeem Akbar when he speaks to us, he says that the Impu represented the discriminator. That this Impu, this dog, can bury food and can know the difference between the fine line between what can be eaten and what can't be eaten. He knows what's already dead and what's on its way to dying, what he can and cannot eat. Impu is the jackal.
You said something else after discriminating. Trustworthy, loyal, discriminating.
Analytical.
Analytical.
He is the one that weighs and can tell if you meant bad by what you did. You know that the saying, my heart is heavy? That's why they would weigh that heart, because a feather is very light. And if you have a light heart, you say, I have a light heart, my heart is light, means that you don't have any problems. You've not done anything wrong. That's where that comes out of the Kemetic concept of the heart, of the feather being so light, that if your heart is as light as a feather, you will not be found guilty. It is Impu who is looking at the heart, and when the heart and the feather get to the point where they're almost even, and you can't tell which is heavier, Impu is the one that then says, well, he did not mean that much. He did not mean negative. Or she did mean negative, which will tilt the scale. Which then will be recorded by Tahuti and presented to Usia as the God of resurrection, or the essence of resurrection.
That has to do with also maybe your intuition, maybe? Or is that...
Who is this? Intuition. I would say...
Our intuition, like innately you feel...
I would give that to Nebuchadnezzar. See, realize that every one of these lectures doesn't have to be everything. It's them in totality. It's them in totality that makes you the well-rounded human being or the not so well-rounded.
Well, all these things are in us.
Yes, they are. All of these are personalities within you as part of the story. Okay, let's look at the Assyrian drama in a very gentle...
Well, I was gonna,
Yes?
No, I'm just saying.
I just wanted to know if you would give the, like, female or male counterpart for each of these. Like, for instance, Hosea and Hosea are female
Yes,
counterparts.
Nebuchadnezzar is female, Setesh is male.
Well, who's the female counterpart for Satesh?
It's funny. Nebuchadnezzar is normally the one to look at as the counterpart. But you see, when we're looking at this and we're analyzing this, and we put ourselves in the African framework, we have to look at them for who they are. And try to avoid putting good and bad. Try to avoid putting a judgment on Satesh. And just know who he is. Yes, I know what you're saying. So that's why it's hard for me to answer your question, because from the Western mindset, if Satesh is evil, his counterpart should be evil too. Do you follow along with my... And that's not the way this is. Satesh represents might. He represents the brutal takeover, the brutal fighting. That's all part of it. Because as we get into the Assyrian drama, you're going to see the role that he plays in all of this. Okay, let's look at the story in a rounded way. Yes, Sister Mary.
This is basically equivalent to the elements of literature then, like the protagonist, the antagonist.
Yes, that's exactly what it is. That's where drama came from. That's where literature came from. That's where writing came from. The Assyrian drama, while there could be many that preceded it, the Assyrian drama comes to us that has all of the elements of drama in it. Oh, yes.
I'm just thinking about literature, you have to write it, and how you break this down, and
Yes.
you could explain it, like, when you have to write it.
Yes. And you can tell your children, leave Satesh alone now, sit down in that seat. And you can begin to use your classroom as a setting to create these types of understandings of the human personality. Because our children don't understand this, and this is why it's so important, because Satesh is not a bad person. Satesh is a person who does bad things.
Only when necessary.
Sometimes even when not necessary. Because sometimes his lower passions lead him to do things he should not do. So he is led to do it, but his own lower passions is what leads him to do it. And please know, when I say him, I don't mean him as a him.
I don't mind you saying him as much.
I know that. I know that she was smiling. But what's important is to understand that the role that this individual played is in fact the role that the European American has played in world history. The lower passions, the jealousy, the envy, the fighting, the might makes right, as opposed to might can't make right. We've been through this before, haven't we?
Yep.
Might and right, might can't be right. Okay,
So white's not always right. Now, looking at this and you explaining Satesh and Lucia and all, it makes me think about heaven and hell.
yes.
Okay.
And the passing of the 12 gates.
Passing the 12 gates, and how I'm looking at it is, let's say if you utilize Satesh too much, you can't get past the next gate until you kind of learn how to use Lucia more.
Chances are,
Because the way we're taught is that, see, thinking on the African mindset, if everything's in infinity, then I can't see so much destruction. Like there's still a balance of harmony or hope, I would put. So then, looking at hell, and with itself, with this dying and gnashing of teeth and all this burning and fire, I'm looking at Lucia drama from a spiritual point of view. It may be like, well, Satesh has to learn another lesson, so he can't get, let's say, through the third gate until he corrects himself and brings himself to high passions, which means that they're looking at it as a realistic way. Would mean, well, if I did something bad yesterday, it doesn't mean I have to keep doing bad tomorrow. I can wake up with a new high consciousness.
yes, but that would be Haru that did that.
Right.
Satesh must be put in his place.
His place, right.
Okay. Now, hold on just one moment, my brother. Let me do this, because I have about 10 minutes to do this, because I'm way over time. And I want to at least present this to you. Let's look at the Usirian drama. Usir travels around, and when we're telling this story, I want you to think of the African community in the diaspora. Usir travels around the world spreading knowledge, civilization. Usir returns, and his nation has a banquet for his return. The only problem is that Satesh and Sebau are the lower passions. They're known as Satesh's henchpeas. Sebau, S-E-B-A-U, S-E-B-A-U. Again, please know you may see this story told in different ways, but basically the way that I have come upon this story is in this way that I can make it clear to the children what the Usirian drama is about. Okay. Satesh and the Sebau, some say it was 72, some people say more. Something about the number. If they give you a number, there's a reason why they gave you a number. Satesh and Sebau plot to trick Usir. Put him in a coffin. But the way they do it, and please Cinderella, I'm sorry, Satesh and Sebau build a coffin that can only fit Usir. And they challenge the people at the banquet to see if they can fit in the coffin. And if they fit in this coffin, it belongs to them. So everybody tries and nobody fits. Hosea gets in and he fits perfectly. But before he could jump out the coffin, they close the top, hack it up, nail it, and go upstream or downstream. They hide it in a tree, hollow out a tree and hide it. Keep in mind the meaning of tree of life. All of these things, all of that, keep that in mind. And also keep in mind that they crucified Christ on a tree also. All of a sudden, Aset, through her determination, decides she's going to go around the world and look for Usir, her husband, her queen. Through a lot of different talking and things that she did, she finds out where he is through the help of Nebuchadnezzar. And she finds him and she brings him back. Still alive. Okay. Setesh finds out about Usir being released, and they fight again. Through trickery and a lot of other things, Setesh and the Sabaul overcome Usir, chop him up in 14 pieces, and scatter him around the world, particularly in the places where Usir has traveled. Is that or is that not the African diaspora? Chopped us up into 14 pieces and scattered us around the world. Now, I'm just asking you to make these analogies in this story because it's real for us today. Okay. The fight with him again, and what happens is that he tricks him, he cuts him up, and he scatters. I want you to keep that word scatter and shatter in mind. Okay? Aset with Nebuchadnezzar finally find 13 pieces, but cannot find the 14th piece, which is Usir's reproductive organ. However, through knowledge that she's given, insight, Aset comes to realize that it is in fact in the water. What came out of water? And what would only be natural to be in the water, but that element that would create life. She gets it, the reproductive organ, she brings it back, and she puts it in its proper place. But she needs help. So here comes Tehuti. Tehuti comes along with knowledge, Aset with determination, Nebuchadnezzar with insight, through will. Usir comes back to life again. They cohabit, and Heru is then on his way. Now, do you see what's happening? Knowledge and determination put this body back together again. Brothers and sisters out here who are determined to make this work, who realize what has to be done, they're saying this has to be done. Determination. Now, Aset is a woman. That woman is in all of us. That determination, that ability to do, and that is like a mother who keeps the world together. Twice, Aset has saved the world. Twice the world has been saved by a woman. So no one can tell me that African men look down on African women. Because by the very nature of this story, it is the woman who has saved the nation twice. Just in the Usirian drama alone. Okay. Tehuti brings Usir back to life through higher consciousness. Heru is brought forward. Now please understand, this was the virgin birth. This was a virgin birth in the sense that it was a communication with God. In the sense that this child came about. This was the whole beauty of childbirth in Africa. So all women, no matter if you had had relations prior to it or not, you still were a virgin, because the fact that you became impregnated made it that you had contact with God. Do you know what I'm saying? You know, it's the difference between eating eggs and having a chick. One egg is fertilized and the others are not. What the ancient Africans were saying is that when the egg is fertilized, it's a virgin birth. It's a birth between God, the essence of God in the male, and the essence of God in the female. That's a wonderful story. Yet today's virgin birth story is told in a personifying way that makes it like there was only one woman in the world that ever went through this experience, And I have nothing against that story, if that makes you strong. But when I see this story written thousands of years prior to that story, I have to look at the Hail Mary as an ode to an impregnated woman. Because if you say the Hail Mary, and you get to that middle passage where you say Mother of God, if God is God, and someone is the Mother of God, what is that woman if you look at the spectrum of who God is? Okay, now, to continue the story, Heru comes forward. I'm sorry, I missed something? Okay, let me stop and if I lost you. Where did I lose you?
With this Mother of God.
Okay, no. No, okay, look at what the Hail Mary says. Hail Mary, Mother of God.
Yeah,
See, I forgot this. I've not said it in such a long time. I say it another way. And then in the middle you say, Holy Mary, Mother of God.
Yeah, you do.
Okay, now, if God is this great, wondrous being, this essence, what is the Mother of God? It must be part of the Godhead. So this whole concept of God being a man, it doesn't, I can't digest it. It doesn't go along with my digestive tract. Did I answer? Did I respond to that question? Okay.
It's another name for Set, Isis.
Isis is another name, yes. Isis is another name. Setesh is known as Set, or Setan, which is where Satan comes from. Nebuchadnezzar is Nephthys, and Heru is Horus. Okay. I want to go through this. Okay.
Osiris Osiris.
I'm sorry? Osiris Osiris, that's right. Okay. Now what happens with Heru? Heru is born, and it is Heru's job to resurrect or to, we have a word for it. Reading, writing, reciprocity. See, I don't believe in 3 R's, I believe in 4 R's. Reading, writing, arithmetic, and reciprocity. Reciprocity, the completing of the cycle. Heru says he is going to avenge his father's death. Please don't get this confused with Star Wars. They did take this story from the Assyrian drama, but they messed it up. Heru fights Setesh, but the only problem is that in beating Setesh, he chains him. Now here comes our set.
He does what?
He chains him.
Chains
him.
Okay.
Beats Setesh, chains him.
Right.
But here comes our set. And our set lets him go. And Heru comes back. And he's mad with his mother. He's infuriated with his mother. He said, after all this time, I harnessed the man who killed your husband and my father, and you let him go. And she says, child, you can never chain evil. You must put it in its place.
So that
You hear the message coming from our set? You cannot chain evil because it will break loose. You have to confine it and put it in its place and control it. So in other words, you take all your lower passions and you put them down, like the story that we told about you having a friend. You just don't lock up that thought in your mind and say, well, hey, it's just one of those things, I still don't particularly care for the fact she got the job, but she's my friend and I'll go on. Our set comes into your mind and says, no, you have to do more than that. You must put that feeling in its place. Otherwise, it will be with you always.